Hey, what's up guys? So today we're finally going to talk about the Nikon 24-70 2.8 lens that I picked up last year. I had it for a while. I figured I will use it for a couple months first before I do a review because this is such an important lens to a lot of people. I want to get the full experience of it before I pass any kind of judgment. And again, this review is strictly my personal opinion. Your mileage may vary by a lot. So a little bit about me as a quote-unquote photographer. Obviously I do this for fun on the side, not serious about it. I just want to capture some beautiful pictures during my travel or during my day offs, just to preserve the memory. And I really enjoy taking pictures and sharing it with friends, of course. So let's talk a little bit about a camera body I have this on first, so you can kind of get a sense of like the scale and etc. So I got a Nikon D600 entry-level full frame, and which is like 2 generations behind already. And before I got the 24-70 2.8, I've been shooting prime, mainly because it's cheap and also the image quality is superb. So right there we got the 50mm 1.8. And then we got an 85mm 1.8, and I also had a 28mm 1.8, which I sold after I got this 24-70, simply because I don't do a lot of wide-angle shots. So even when I was shooting prime, I maybe used that lens like 10 times, and it would just been sitting on the shelf, which is a shame because it's a great lens. So let me talk a little bit about why I decided to pick up this 20-70 2.8 zoom when I have a full ensemble of prime lens already. So as an amateur photographer, of course I'm pursuing lenses with great image quality to compensate for my lack of skills as much as possible, and also cost. So I arrived at prime lens logically. However, one limitation I have with the prime lens is that it takes time to swap the lenses out, especially doing portrait shoots where the other person is kind of waiting for me to, compose and then take the shot. Even though these are my friends, since I'm just doing this for fun, I still feel bad. I'll be like, wait a minute, all right, hold on a second, let me change lens. Or like moving back and forth. It just takes a while, and I'm a pretty shy person. You may not know, but I'm a pretty shy person, and I'm terrified of like troubling other people. So that has always been one of my issues with prime lenses. The fact that I have to take the time to swap lenses. And then sometimes I need to decide like which lens to use. Like, okay, we have a scene here. Do I use the 85? Or do I use the 50? Or do I even pull out that 28 that I probably do not have that in the bag? So that's one thing. Another one is that when I travel, I have this big backpack. I carry like all my lenses, right? That's like 3 lenses because, hey, who knows? Maybe I need all of them. Because I'm kind of like a cautious person, I like to be prepared. So typically I would like jam all my lens in the backpack and lug that away. So instead I got this guy right here, which covered almost the entire range, 24-70 versus I had the 28, 50, and 85. There is a little trade-off. It is, of course, if you look at it, it is big, right, and heavy. This lens is actually almost 2 pounds, pushing almost 2 pounds. And also, instead of a 1.8 with my primes, this is now a 2.8, which before I got this lens, I thought it would be a huge deal. I was like, oh no, I'm making so much, I'm compromising so much. But after using this lens for a couple months and extensively on one of my recent trip to Exuma, it's not a big deal, because when I look back to my old images, right, unless I'm really taking close-up portraits, well, not close-up portraits, but portraits in general, I don't really shoot wide open. And even in those portraits, sometimes I actually step down a little bit, right, to make sure that person is in focus, or to make sure that if the background is relevant, I want to make sure that people can kind of at least see what the background is, to kind of give the portrait some context, instead of blowing everything out, everything just be like a nice little smudge in the back behind the person. So turns out that f2.8 was not really a deal breaker that I thought it would be for me, coming from the 1.8 prime family. So if I'm doing this right, my video editing is kind of terrible. I would like to show you some images that I took from Exuma. These are all during this trip. This is a 5 night trip, if I remember right. Went to Bahamas of Exuma, the home of the Caribbean swimming pigs, of course. So during this trip, the only lens I brought was the 24-70 2.8, and I left all the prime at home. I was like, okay, I just picked up this lens. I actually got this lens for this trip because I don't want to lug everything with me, and I don't want to have the headache of like choosing which lens to use at that time. And I know that because that location is so exotic, and I'm dealing with some of the wild animals there, that sometimes I need to take that shot quickly, right? I probably don't have the time to compose and move back and forward, and pose things before I take pictures, because that pig is not going to wait for you when it's swimming in the water, or that iguana that's about to take that grape is not going to wait for you to change your lens before it's snatch it up. So as a nice walk around lens, I pick up this 24-70. Before this, I did a lot of research, talked to some friends who actually had 24-70, although I think most of them are Canon shooters. But they gave me their perspective. So based on what I hear, I figured that this lens would be great for traveling if it's like if you go back to the hotel each day. So it's like day trips, you know what I mean? If it's some serious backpacking trip, you probably need to rethink this, because this thing gets heavy. And I would not carry it the whole day on just like a single shoulder strap. I would probably still lug it around in a backpack, which I did. What I did was like, I still have my f2.8 backpack, great back by the way, still holding up perfectly. And I have the what's that brand? Black Rapids cross shot strap, which I bought because I know this lens is heavy, which I bought. I have it hooked up, and I just shoved the entire camera into the bag, and when I need it, I just pull the whole thing out and I just drape it across my shoulder. And it was okay. I mean, like, short-term wise, it does not feel heavy, right? I use this term sparingly, it's feel balanced with this body, even though I know this body is kind of light in comparison to other pro bodies. It feels balanced, it hangs perfectly on my side, and with this cross-shot strap, I wouldn't say it feel like it's not there. I know it's there, the camera is there, but then it feels comfortable. It tucks away nicely. It falls naturally next to my hip, and I can easily pull it up and take the shots that I want and sling it back down. And I have walked around town and like walk on the beaches with this camera hanging on the side, and I do not feel that it's too heavy. Now, would I go on a hike with it? I probably would not. If I do, I'll probably like shove it at the bottom of my backpack, so the center of gravity stays low and it's balanced, but it's not too heavy per se. It's manageable. So a lot of people complain online that this lens is too heavy for walking around, etc., etc. I find that to be, I wouldn't say it's false, because people are built differently. But I'm not a big guy. I'm not a strong guy. I'm 5'7", weigh 140 pounds. The camera lens feels fine. It's definitely a lot heavier than a prime that I'm used to, but it's manageable. Now, weight aside, the size is big. And before we go on, let me introduce you. This lens is also called the Darth Vader lens because check out the hood. Yeah, cool, huh? But sorry, tangent. But all right, in comparison, we have 85 1.8 right here. Let me put it on. So actually, let me put on the hood too, so you can kind of get a full sense of how it is when I'm shooting. So this guy's long but narrow. One of my issue or concern before getting a lens is that, okay, I'm gonna look ridiculous shooting with this lens. But you know what? I mean, once I hold it up, and actually shooting it, that kind of completely escaped my mind and was okay. Let me do it without the hood. Without the hood, it would be like this. Slightly more subtle, but it's still a really long lens. Now, let's compare it to the 85. Oh, by the way, check out the snow outside. It's snowing in Maryland. It's supposed to snow the entire day. And in New York, they're supposedly getting 2 feet of snow. It's claiming to be one of the biggest blizzards ever. So good luck to the folks in New York. So here's 85. Much lighter, almost half the weight, feels like at least. And I'll show you the 50. Oh, sorry. So 50 is like this, right here. Small little guy. Of the hood. Very light. So, in comparison, cap this guy right here. Lengthwise, you can see that the 2470 is long. It's like 2 prime lens stacked up to get the length. It is a little bit unwieldy because of the length. The diameter is perfectly fine. It's actually a little bit more narrow than the 85 1.8. So let me put this guy back on so I can cap the 85. So weight-wise, it is heavy, but it's manageable. Size-wise, it's a little intrusive. People's gonna see you when you hold this camera, and you won't go undetected. However, if you can look past that, the image quality is as amazing as people claim to be. Looking at the images coming out of this lens, I feel like I'm looking at prime lens photos. Granted, this is one of the first high-end lens that I'm using, right? Before this, I've been shooting prime or even the kit zoom a long time ago. But the quality coming out of this lens is just like the prime lens that I have, save for maybe like 85mm 1.8. But that's a little bit different because of the extra focal length and really shallow depth of field. So there is some difference, but for the most part they looks almost the same. You know, I sometimes can't even tell apart. But of course, if you have the 1.4 prime lens, that's probably a different level. But compared to the f1.8 of what I have, I know for sure that the quality is on par. Now, in terms of actual practical use on travels and stuff like that, for trips where I would go back to the hotel each night, or for trips where I don't have to walk a lot, this is perfectly fine. 2470 2.8, although it's heavy, although it's long, it works fine. It's comfortable to carry. It's not too bad. That was one of my major concerns. But if I know I'm going to be walking a lot on this trip, I will probably bring my Fuji X100S because weight and size is a concern, ultimately, if you're going to walk a lot. So, in closing, sorry, I rambled a lot. No, it's a long video. So in closing, I found this lens. I actually got it used on Craigslist. I managed to get it for $1,300, which is a great price for this lens. I think this lens new is about $1,900. You may be able to find it for cheap on eBay. But the problem with those lenses is that they're gray markets, meaning that they're shipping from possibly Asia. And the problem is that Nikon USA would not even service those lenses if there's any issue. Like if you want to pay for them to service your lens, they won't take it, simply because it's not supposed to be sold in the US market, right? And so you have to find like third-party lens repair to repair them. So it's too risky for me. So ultimately, I went on Craigslist, found like a mint condition lens, and made sure it's in the US markets, and I went ahead and bought it. And these lenses are built like tanks. Like they last for a long time. It's a great investment. They hold the value relatively well, even though I'm surprised this one sold at $1,300. Usually they're a little bit more, 14 or 15 for use. So I really lucked out there. And to summarize the image quality and size impression as well compared to the prime, image quality, they're comparable to the f1.8 primes I got. I cannot tell you if it can compare to like the 1.4 because I don't have them. and honestly, I'm not at that level, so I'm sure the other reviews will kind of make more comparison. But for me, right, amateur photographer running a D600, coming from the world of prime, 1.8 primes, I think this lens is totally comparable to the 1.8 prime family that I had. In terms of like physical dimension and weight, I think this lens is heavy, this lens is bulky, it's true, yes, but it's not unmanageable. It fits, especially if it's sling, you just leave it on the hip and it's comfortable walking. I would not walk more than, say, an hour with this lens. I feel like an hour is probably where my breaking point is, and I'll need to take it off my shoulder and shove it in the backpack. But it is manageable, and it does kind of speed up the process a lot. Like when I take photos, I just kind of zoom in, zoom out. I haven't used the zoom in so long that it was like, oh man, I can't believe it. I can't believe I'm missing out. But zooming is awesome, it makes things so much easier. It takes stress off me because I know the entire 24 to 70 range is covered. I can just zoom in and out, and it's quick. I don't feel embarrassed asking people to wait, let me change my lens, or like moving it around, etc. If you're a more confident person, you may not have the same issue, but I'm not, so this works for me. Finally, would I buy it again? Absolutely. I know a lot of people like this lens, especially for photojournalists, and now I understand why. It's just such a well-rounded lens. It takes great quality images. The compromise is the weight and size, but it's not terrible. I think it's totally worth it, especially if you can find one in great condition used. Would I buy it brand new? I don't know. You're probably talking to the wrong person, because personally, I would probably never buy a new lens if there's a good one available online. So for used one, $1,300, $1,400, yes, I'll gladly pay that again, because I think it's so great. It makes your life so much easier. At least it made my life easier. And image quality, you didn't really compensate much. So I would, yes, absolutely buy it again. I would definitely recommend it. It is a strange lens to buy because everybody seems to be moving towards Micro Four Third or mirrorless due to size. I believe the Sony A7 is definitely catching up to DSLR. Body is there, sensor is there. Unfortunately, the lens lineup is still kind of weak right now. So until then, I think this is still my go-to combo. But I have a feeling that in a year or two, I'll probably jump ship to the mirrorless. Once the lens lineup catches up to regular DSLR. Well, apologize again for the super long video, but hopefully this kind of gives you a sense of why I picked this 24-70 lens and how much I like it and my reasoning behind it. And again, all these is just based on like personal opinion. I've been using this lens for a couple months now on actually 2 trips now. And I just want to wait until now to give you some feedback, because I feel like I have finally have a good grasp on how I like this lens in comparison to the family of prime that I used before. So hopefully this video was helpful. If you have any question, go ahead and leave a comment. I'm sure like me or some other people who have this lens or is looking at this lens can help answer some questions. Well, until then, talk to you later and stay warm.